the conflict in the Middle East enters its sixth day, a U.S. Senate vote failed to halt the joint U.S.-Israeli war against Iran. U.S. Senate Republicans have voted down on an effort to halt the joint U.S.-Israeli war against Iran. The legislation, known as the War Powers Resolution, would have limited U.S. President Donald Trump's power to carry out further attacks without congressional approval. The United States has repeatedly argued it launched the surprise attacks in a move to destroy Iran's missile capabilities. However, during a closed-door meeting with Congress members, Trump officials acknowledged that there was no intelligence suggesting Iran planned to attack the U.S. first. U.S. officials have also referenced plans by Tehran to develop nuclear weapons. However, the UN's nuclear chief, Rafael Grossi, said this week that his agency found no evidence that Iran was building a nuclear bomb.
President Trump, after a sincere effort to bring this conflict to a peaceful conclusion, concluded that to continue to allow this regime to move forward would put America at unacceptable risk.
6 Americans have already died for an illegal war that no one in this country wants. 900 to 1,000 people in the region have died. U.S. embassies all over the region are under attack.
Aerial attacks continued for a sixth day on Thursday, with Iran launching missiles at Israel after a U.S. submarine sunk an Iranian warship. According to authorities, over 1,000 people have been killed in Iran, 70 in Lebanon, and around a dozen in Israel since the war erupted last Saturday. Neighboring states brace for further escalation after Iran threatened to destroy all military and economic infrastructure in the region.
A U.S. submarine torpedoed an Iranian warship now sinking in the Indian Ocean, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said Wednesday.
Yesterday, in the Indian Ocean, and we'll play it on the screen there, an American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death. The first sinking of an enemy ship by a torpedo since World War II. Like in that war, back when we were still the War Department, we are fighting to win.
Today, early morning, MRCC received
Sri Lanka's foreign minister told Parliament that Sri Lanka's Navy received information that the ship Iris Dina, with 180 people on board, was in distress and sinking. Sri Lanka's Navy said Wednesday it recovered 87 bodies and rescued 32 people. The Iranian naval ship sank outside Sri Lanka's territorial waters, officials added. The search and rescue operation is ongoing.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has reiterated his firm opposition to the war in Iran, distancing his country from the US-led military offensive during an emergency press conference this Wednesday. Despite critical remarks and threats of a trade embargo from US President Donald Trump, the socialist leader continues to advocate for a diplomatic resolution.
La posición del gobierno de España se resume en 4 palabras: no a la guerra. Nosotros repudiamos al régimen de Irán, que reprime, que mata vilmente a sus ciudadanos, particularmente a las mujeres. Pero al mismo tiempo rechazamos este conflicto y pedimos una solución diplomática y política.
Diplomatic tensions erupted after the Spanish government vetoed the use of the Rota and Moron military bases for the campaign. In response, Donald Trump has labeled Spain a terrible partner and hinted a total trade freeze between the two nations.
Didn't do it, and now Spain actually said that we can't use their bases, and that's all right. We could use their base if we want. We could just fly in and use it. Nobody's going to tell us not to use it.
Sanchez, however, remained firm, asserting that one cannot respond to one illegality with another, and that the priority remains protecting the civilian population. Recalling the consequences of the 2003 Iraq War, he warned against repeating the mistakes of the past. In Brussels, the EU has closed ranks around Madrid. Vice President of the Commission, Teresa Ribera, warned Washington that foreign trade is negotiated as a bloc and any sanctions against Spain would be met with a collective response.
We're now into the 5th day of war since the United States and Israel began strikes on Iran. And here in Qatar, tensions remain high. The country's Ministry of Defense says at dawn on Wednesday, its air and naval defenses successfully intercepted 10 drones and 2 cruise missiles launched from Iran. Throughout the day, Euronews journalists saw 2 combat helicopters patrolling the skies over Doha together with American and British Air Force planes in a reinforced security perimeter of the city. Qatar's cabinet reiterated its strong condemnation of, quote, successive waves of Iranian attacks on Qatar that it calls a flagrant violation of its sovereignty. Meanwhile, the Qatar news agency reported the arrest of 2 sleeper cells allegedly linked to Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Q&A said 10 suspects had been detained, 7 accused of spying on vital military infrastructure, and 3 allegedly tasked with carrying out sabotage operations. The economic impact of this widening war is also sending shockwaves around the world. Qatar Energy declared force majeure on Wednesday, just 2 days after 2 of its liquefied natural gas facilities were attacked and forced to pause production. Force majeure is a legal term used when a company cannot meet its contractual obligations due to circumstances beyond its control. Meanwhile, Qatar's airspace remains closed, and Qatar Airways says the next update for passengers is expected on Friday. Adil Halim, Euronews, Doha.
The US consulate here in Dubai Creek was hit overnight in a drone attack, resulting in a fire. Now, the UAE and Qatar are very much aligned in that Iran has crossed a red line and has lost its compass, they say. The other developing news overnight was that 2 Iranian sleeper cells were arrested in Qatar. This will, of course, send ruffles through the security community around the globe for fear there could be further Revolutionary Guard operatives active in other countries. Yesterday, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here in Dubai and also in Doha held press conferences reassuring people that they have enough air defense ammunition to protect the country. Also, in addition to that, of course, those repatriation flights are continuing out of DXB today. Qatar Airways have suspended their flights again. We've just heard a little bit earlier today, but the interesting thing in terms of the flights here in the UAE specifically, we are hearing about repatriation flights, people wanting to come back into the country and return home. Jane Witherspoon, Euronews in Dubai.
Reverse migration is surging as Damascus opens border crossings to thousands of Syrians fleeing escalating Israeli attacks in Lebanon. Amid deteriorating security, approximately 11,000 travelers, mostly Syrians, arrived on Monday via Dajdedat Yabous and Jusia crossings.
وضع منيح مش منيح القصف والضرب وجينا على بلدنا بدنا نرجع. العملة السورية جينا والله معاملته منيحة بس إنه عذبونا شوي كتير.
Syrian authorities have mobilized medical teams and simplified procedures to ensure quick and safe entry, even for those who previously left the country illegally. Returnees interviewed by Euronews described their decision as a voluntary escape from indiscriminate strikes in Beirut and beyond.
جايين من بيروت عرفت كيف؟ هاي العالم كلها جاي من بيروت، هربانة من الضرب يعني ضرب عشوائي، يعني اليوم إسرائيل عم تضرب ضرب عشوائي، العالم فلت بحالها شو عم تركض يمين شمال بس بدها تخلص. إيه؟ الطريق تعبان يعني مضروب الطريق مرتين 3 مضروب على الطرقات. هلا العالم مبسوط انه جاي على سوريا بدها تعيش ببلد عرشون امن عرشون تستقر تحاول تستقر عرشون بلدها.
Despite the economic challenges awaiting them in Syria, many noted that the security of the homeland is favorable to the current violence unfolding in Lebanon. This mass exodus marks a dramatic demographic reversal, turning a decade of migration towards Lebanon into a desperate trek back home.
The European Commission on Wednesday unveiled its long-awaited industrial plan called Industrial Accelerator Act, rolling out a European preference that shuts China out of European public funding and tightens the screws on Beijing's future investment in the EU. The strategy targets 3 strategic sectors: clean technologies, car manufacturers, and energy-intensive industries such as aluminium, steel, and cement.
Si nous ne faisons rien, aujourd'hui, il est fort probable que 100% des technologies sur les clean tech soient produite à 100% en Chine dans les prochaines années. Il est fort probable que notre industrie du ciment, notre industrie de l'acier soit à 100% délocalisée dans les prochaines années. Et donc si nous considérons que ces technologies doivent être stratégiques et doivent permettre justement à l'Union européenne d'assurer à la fois la question technologique mais en même temps la production européenne, il nous faut des outils à la fois de défense commerciale et en même temps des outils de production en Europe.
The proposal introduces Made in Europe thresholds, including a 70% EU content requirement for electric vehicles, with notable exceptions for most battery components, 25% for aluminium and 25% for cement. In the end, the Commission has proposed extending EU origin status to products coming from trading partners with free trade agreements that apply reciprocity, notably in public procurement contracts. That excludes China and the US, which do not enjoy any such agreements with the bloc, but it might also exclude more like-minded partners such as Canada, where a buy Canadian policy might apply soon to EU companies.